So I've recently been reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, and it has changed my perspective on how I view things. It has some mind-blowing concepts that we'll get into, and I think this will be a very influential book going forward. Let me explain. So our culture today is so focused on unrealistic positive expectations like you need to be healthier, happier, smarter, or more popular. But when you stop and really think about it, this type of life advice is actually fixated on what you lack. It looks at what you perceive by your shortcomings and failures and then emphasizes them for you. Like you learn about the best ways to make more money because you feel as though you don't have enough money already. Or you stand in front of the mirror repeating affirmations saying that you are beautiful because you feel as though you're not beautiful already. But this fixation on what's positive and better only reminds us over and over again of what we lack. He gives a profound and mind-blowing quote that says, "The desire for a more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience." Wow! Wanting a positive experience is a negative experience, and accepting a negative experience is a positive experience. That means that the more you desperately want to be rich, for example, the more poor and unworthy you will feel, regardless of how much money you actually make. Or the more you want to be happy and loved, the lonelier you will get, regardless of those who surround you. And generally, what that means is if pursuing the positive is a negative, then pursuing the negative generates the positive. That's interesting and so true. Like the pain you get in the gym results in better all-round health and energy. The failures in business are what leads to a better understanding of what's necessary to be successful. He says everything worthwhile in life is won by accepting the associated negative experience, and any attempt to escape the negative experience will only backfire. Essentially, what he's saying and what the book teaches is learning how to choose what matters to you based on finely honed personal values. Because here's the thing, there is no such thing as not giving a fuck. You must give a fuck about something. The question that this book tries to answer is, what do you give a fuck about? Like, what do you choose to give a fuck about? And how can we not give a fuck about what doesn't essentially matter? First, you need to gain self-awareness, and there are multiple layers to it. The first layer is simply understanding your emotions, like knowing what makes you feel sad and what makes you feel happy. The second layer is an ability to ask why we feel certain emotions. Like, why do you feel anger? Is it because you failed to achieve some goal? This layer of questioning helps in understanding the root cause of these emotions. Once we understand the root cause, we can ideally do something to change it. The third layer is our personal values. Why do I consider this to be a success or failure? By what standard am I judging myself and everybody around me? He says values underlay everything we are and do. If what we value is unhelpful, if what we consider success or failure is poorly chosen, then everything based upon those values, the thoughts, the emotions, the day-to-day feelings, will all be out of work. This deeper level of self-awareness is what most self-help gurus ignore. They take people who are miserable because they want to be rich and then give them all sorts of advice on how to make more money while ignoring important value-based questions. Questions like, why do they feel such a need to be rich in the first place? How are they choosing to measure success or failure for themselves? Most of the advice out there doesn't address these questions. People's perception and feelings may change, but the underlying value and metric by which those values are being assessed stay the same, which isn't real progress. There's a handful of common values that create really poor problems for us. Pleasure, material success, always being right, and always staying positive. These values are poor ideals for a person's life. Some of the greatest moments of one's life are not pleasant, not successful, not known, and not positive. The point is to nail down some good values and metrics and pleasure and success will naturally emerge as a result. Good values are reality based, socially constructive, and immediate and controllable. Bad values are the opposite. They are superficial, socially destructive, and not immediate and controllable. This is what self improvement is really about: prioritizing better values and choosing better things to give a fuck about. The author gives 5 counterintuitive values that he believes are the most beneficial values a person can adopt. They all require confronting deeper problems rather than avoiding them through highs, and these values can actually be life changing. Let's talk about them. If you feel miserable in your current situation, chances are you feel as if it's out of your control, that the problems you have were forced upon you against your will, and you might actually even feel victimized. But there's a simple realization from which all personal improvement and growth emerges. This is the realization that we, individually, are responsible for everything in our lives, no matter the external circumstances. We might not control what happens to us, but we are always responsible for how we interpret it and how we respond to it. The more we choose to accept responsibility in our lives, the more power we will exercise over our lives. But a lot of us hesitate to take responsibility because we believe that to be responsible means to also be at fault. But they are not the same. For example, if you woke up and found a newborn baby on your doorstep, it wouldn't be your fault that that baby is there, but it would be your responsible to choose what to do next. The author puts it this way: fault is past tense and responsibility is present tense. Fault results from choices already made, while responsibility results from choices currently being made. And so there's a difference between blaming someone else for a situation and the person actually being responsible for a situation. Nobody is ever responsible for your situation but you. If you're like me, you might hear all this and then ask the question, okay, how do I change? His response to this is, there is no how. Change is as simple as choosing to care about better values. It's really that simple, but as he points out, it's not easy. Most of us are wrong about a lot of things. We are wrong about ourselves and others, about our society and culture, and about the world and universe. But that's a good thing. Growth comes from learning. And when we learn something new, the author says we don't go from wrong to right, but rather we go from wrong to slightly less wrong. And when we learn something additional, we go to slightly less wrong than that, and so on. And so we shouldn't seek to find the ultimate right answer for ourselves, but we should rather find ways to be less wrong. And you shouldn't assume to be right in any situation, because certainty is the enemy of growth. Nothing is for certain until it has already happened. That's why accepting inevitable imperfections in our values is necessary for any growth to take place. Instead of striving for certainty, we should search for doubt. Doubt about our beliefs, about our feelings, and about our future. Instead of trying to be right all the time, look for ways you might be wrong, because you are. Being wrong opens up the possibility of change and growth. The more you embrace being uncertain, the more comfortable you will feel in knowing what you don't know. We don't know how lovable, attractive, or successful we could potentially become. The only way to achieve these things is to remain uncertain of them. Uncertainty is the root of all progress and all growth. And so the only way to solve our problems is to first admit that our actions and beliefs up to this point have been wrong and are not working. This level of openness to being wrong must exist for any real change and growth to take place. Improvement at anything is based on thousands of tiny failures, and the magnitude of success is based on how many times you failed at something. Like if someone is better than you at something, then it's likely because that person has failed more than you. The problem is, one of our biggest failures in life, in doing basically anything, is the fear of failure. But if you think about a young child trying to learn how to walk, that child will fall down and hurt itself hundreds of times, but that child doesn't give up. That means avoiding failure is something we learned at some point later in life. At some point, most of us reach a place where we are afraid to fail and instinctively avoid failure. A lot of this fear of failure comes from having chosen terrible values. For instance, if you measure yourself by the standard, make everyone you meet like you, then you will be anxious because failure is 100% defined by the actions of others. Thus, your self-worth is at the mercy of judgment by others. But if you choose a better metric like improve your social life, then you can live up to your value of good relations with others, regardless of how other people respond to you. And so to truly be successful at something, you have to be willing to fail at it. If we're unwilling to fail, then we are unwilling to succeed. Because of our culture, many of us have been told that we should be as accepting as possible. Many positive thinking books say open yourself up to opportunities, be accepting, say yes to everything and everyone, and so on. But the author says we need to reject something, otherwise we stand for nothing. He says if nothing is better or more desirable than anything else, then we are empty and our life is meaningless. We are without values and therefore live our life without any purpose. The avoidance of rejection, both giving and receiving it, is often sold to us as a way to make ourselves feel better. But to truly appreciate something, you must confine yourself to it. The act of choosing a value for yourself requires rejecting alternative values. We all must care about something in order to value it. And to value it, we must reject what is not that something. He also says we are defined by what we chose to reject. And so rejection is an important and crucial life skill. Nobody wants to be stuck in a relationship that isn't making them happy, or a business they don't believe in. Nobody wants to feel that they can't say what they really mean. Yet, we choose to do these things all the time. Part of having honesty is becoming comfortable with saying and hearing the word no. In this way, rejection actually makes our relationships better and our emotional lives healthier. In this way, rejection of the alternative liberates us. See, death scares us, and because it scares us, we avoid thinking, talking, or even acknowledging it, even when it's happening to someone close to us. But Marx says, death is the light by which the shadow of all of life's meaning is measured. Without death, everything becomes meaningless. The author mentions a book called The Denial of Death, which essentially makes 2 points. The first point is, as humans, we are blessed with the ability to contemplate both the past and the future. And it's because of this unique mental ability that we all become aware of the inevitability of our own death. This realization causes what's called death terrors. The second point is that we essentially have two selves. The first self is our physical self, the one that eats and sleeps. The second self is our conceptual self, which is our identity or how we see ourselves. But since the inevitability of our physical self dying scares us, we try to construct a conceptual self that will live forever. This is why people try so hard to put their names on buildings or statues. Such efforts are called immortality projects, which in essence can also be referred to as our values. These immortality projects are actually the problem. We need to become more comfortable with the reality of our own death. While death is bad, it's inevitable. And so we shouldn't avoid this realization, but rather come to terms with it as best as we can. Confronting this reality is important because it removes all the superficial and crappy values and helps us ask the important and painful questions. What's your legacy? What mark will you have made? What influence will you have caused? These are important questions to ask, but yet we avoid thinking about them. Why? Because they are hard and scary. But death is the only thing we know with any certainty, and it must be the compass by which we orient all of our other values and decisions. This is the root of all happiness. We are all going to die, but that's because we are fortunate enough to have lived. And for that, we need to be grateful. This chapter is my favorite and is arguably the best chapter in the book. If we accept all these then we'll no longer need to give a fuck about everything. We'll reserve it for the important things like our family and friends, and these will be enough. This book will help you think a little bit more clearly about what you choose to find important in your life. At first, you're going to feel uncertain and uncomfortable. As you reassess your values, you will be met with internal and external resistance. But as you will see, that's a good thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.